Well, a very good morning to you and a warm welcome to Trucking TV. I'm Chris and here I am in front of you on a Saturday morning. What can you say? Good morning to you. We've been a bit kind of, I think the phrase probably is absent over the last 2 or 3 days. We've had quite a lot of stories, but we haven't done any video, essentially because, to be honest with you, I guess the truth is that things went quite wrong on the video front and I had to kind of resettle things and sort things out to get it working properly. It's been a bit of a painful couple of days, but we tried to keep up with a reasonable number of trucking stories, and I think some of the stories that we've done have been really quite serious. Let's start by taking a look, I think, at this one. I think this one is really, what can we say? I think it's pretty bloody bad news. This, I think, was from Tuesday this last week, and that looked like a disaster. Thank God it wasn't a British driver. Thank goodness we weren't to that extent involved. I think this is really awful, and Calais is just getting worse again, I think, after a period of being relatively quiet for drivers. Always a problem, but not a problem to this scale. So that's worth keeping an eye on, and we will try and keep an eye on this. I went to Calais a couple of years ago when they were having some trouble there before, but there was nothing really to see. And on the one day I was able to stay there, didn't really see anything. There were always a few migrants milling about, but I think there are probably more of those around now than were then. So there you have that one. I find this nonetheless deeply disturbing because I'm convinced one of these fine days a driver is going to get even more seriously hurt. The driver in this instance was a Bulgarian guy, and he was dragged from the cab and beaten up. He was taken to hospital. I'm not aware of whether he's still in hospital or whether he's been released. I don't know. But that's still pretty damn bad. And it looks as if the French police really don't have a grip on the situation. I think that's probably true to say. I think it's quite a scary thought for anyone who's taking a wagon over there, particularly if it's a time of pressure, if you like, on other means of illegally escaping or illegally entering this country, like the boat thing that seems to have faded away now that we've got more security going. Don't know, it's difficult, isn't it? But this one was certainly a worrying one, and I think a number of drivers have certainly said, you know, a few things, and I think that's pretty true. Simon Wasp, our good friend on Trucking TV, said that he just thinks it's ridiculous, and Mickey Pilbury, time for action, enough is enough. Well, yeah. I think the one that gets me the most, that reflects the most on it really, is John Newman's comment, which is that how does this all work? These people are allowed through all these other countries to get to our border. What the hell is going on there? I can't understand why they are not stopped in some of these other countries, because all they do is pass through them. They obviously get food and water and whatever, and some sort of accommodation to some degree in some of these countries, and they're just passed on until they come to us. Because they want to come to us, obviously, because our benefits are better than other countries. Makes you wonder what the jack share other countries' benefits are like, doesn't it? Okay. I'm going to move on down the page on Trucking TV with this one as well, because there's, if you didn't see the news story, I think this is one that's worth looking at. I'm just going to take my time to go down here because the machine's feeling sorry for itself this morning. Okay, here we go. If you didn't know, I think there are the haulage industry is one of those odd things. I know that many years ago when I was a driver, and this is many years ago, so my driving experience is not recent, I have nothing to compare with, don't jump on me guys, but when I was a driver, I think it was true to say that drivers were still treated as crap. you know, anybody could drive a truck, and I did for a while. The reality is that the people he worked for were, I think, not very employee oriented, I think is the phrase. But this is a man who was. It's Bob Carter, who passed away, I think, on Thursday night, the 10th of January. He ran a big company, or a decent sized company, called Trans UK. And for many years, he ran services right through road haulage from the UK right through to the Middle East. And when you think about it, I don't think anybody does it now. I'm certain nobody does it now. I don't think anybody would actually dare to, because you'd get kidnapped and shot 3 times a day. But Bob passed away. I was very lucky enough to meet Bob 3 or 4 times. But we also filmed for Trucking TV with our good friend Simon Wasp. We also filmed a little video series with young Bob Carter, and you will find that if you take a look on Trucking TV's YouTube channel. There's a whole string of 3 video interviews with Bob Carter, chatting about his life and times, and talking about his business when he ran those trucks across the Middle East. My goodness, the stories you hear from the drivers. The drivers still get together once a week on a Wednesday lunchtime for lunch. And there's also a really good book, which I'll put down somewhere, and we'll find, and we'll show you at some point, a book by a guy called Matt Ireland about Bob and his company and the drivers who worked for him and the times they had back in those days. It's a pretty interesting read if you're interested in the history of road transport, especially if you're interested in A, continental travel, and B, travel really outside the limits of what you would want to do in this day and age. Let's be honest. I, for one, wouldn't want to drive through a lot of Middle Eastern countries, because the reality is they are bloody scary places now with Al-Qaeda and all that kind of stuff. And in reality, would you want to go to them? Well, no, I wouldn't. So there you have it. Bob Carter passed away on the 10th of January. He did know hundreds of people knew him. There is a little note on our page. If we get more, or when we get more details on Bob's funeral, etc., we will let you know. And we'll also try and get a few more comments from our friends to pass on to you as well, because he was a bit of a hero in transport terms, I think, really because he did stuff that nobody else had thought of doing, and he did it in a pretty determined kind of way, I'd say. I think he was what I'd call the hero of transport, really, because not many people would, in those days, or even in these days, would take it into their heads to go and do something completely daft, like driving all the way across Europe and down past the Mediterranean into some really interesting Arabic countries. These days, I think English people who considered doing that, you probably wouldn't get insurance, would you? I don't know. It's a scary one. But young Bob Carter went ahead and did it, and his drivers did it, and they still, after years of not doing it, they still get together on a Wednesday for a natter and a meal and a natter and a really interesting time. Okay, my name's Chris Gosling. This is Trucking TV. We've just been doing a bit of a catch-up on a Saturday morning. If you watched and enjoyed it, I'm always pleased. If you like what Trucking TV does, as you know, during the week, we try and keep you up to date with crime hotspots, with problems, with solutions we'd like to see. And next week we're going to be asking a few questions about a few projects that are going on, and hopefully we'll bring you more news and information. Okay, I'm Chris, this is Trucking TV, and this is where you'll find all the contacts and links. You can leave us a message via Facebook, you can message us on YouTube and see our backlog of videos. You can see us on Twitter, we've got our own website, and of course you can message or text us on that number, which I think we have just tested, and it's now working and able to take your messages. Okay, I'm Chris, this is Trucking TV. I will see you soon.